I'm Spencer Wixom, Chief Customer Officer at Challenger. When our company was part of CEB, we published a research finding that's always stuck with me. It's a simple line graph that shows a statistically significant relationship, or an upward floating line, between the difficulty of a buying process on one axis and the degree of buyer's regret on the other. Simply put, if the buying process is painful, the customer is more likely to regret buying. As a seller, that means is even if we win a deal, we may have lost the relationship if the journey doesn't go well. I want to talk today about protecting against painful buying journeys. And a good place to start is one of the more uncomfortable moments in the buying journey, late-stage negotiations. As we do win-loss analysis, it's pretty easy to know if we've won a negotiation. We can just ask ourselves, did I get what I wanted here? But it's harder to know if we've negotiated well. That's where I want to focus. How do we negotiate well, specifically in late-stage sales environments? I'll provide you some frameworks and tactics you can use and then test for in your win-loss analysis. Let's start by talking about what makes negotiations hard. And this is where I want to introduce a recent Challenger study on late-stage negotiations conducted with nearly 300 individual sellers. We looked at negotiation trends specific to complex B2B selling and identified behaviors that are different between high-performing negotiators and core-performing negotiators. Let's look at first what most sellers, about 70%, feel they do well, which is maintain a relationship with customers. This isn't a surprise. It doesn't take particular skill to give the farm away to preserve a good relationship. Where most sellers struggle are the three areas on the right: figuring out terms and conditions, getting a good price, and working through heated conversations. All of these elements inject tension into the negotiation. And we're nervous about tension because without the skill and strategy to manage it properly, it can lead to more difficult buying processes and buyer's remorse. But we should also reframe our thinking about negotiations. Yes, every negotiation involves some form of tension and discomfort. But as a sales rep in our study noted, a well-managed negotiation helps the relationship with the customer. We increase trust by navigating complex situations in a fair and professional way. And this is where sellers are really looking for support. In our seller study, 78% told us they either don't have a strategy to manage tension in negotiations, or they don't follow the guidance the organization has provided. This leads them to box themselves in, leak value outside of price, and to give far too much away in their negotiations. When you have an established strategy for managing tension in a sales negotiation, you have a standard against which you can measure your performance and know, one, whether or not the negotiation led to a good outcome, and two, how well you're performed in conducting it. So what tools do sellers need to have a good negotiation strategy? Let me suggest two: a map and a set of rules of thumb. The map is important because it helps us understand where we're going and the points to navigate around in our journey there. Just like early sailors navigating in a fog-filled harbor, if we don't have a map, we run the risk of being surprised by a whole host of obstacles we can't easily see. Rules of thumb are the principles we follow to manage situations as they arise. Negotiating is a far more difficult activity if we simply make up our strategy as we go. My goal here today is to provide you first with a map of what complex B2B sales negotiations look like, and second, with some rules of thumb around what high performers tend to do in these negotiation situations. Based on our research across many different companies and industries, diving deep into their negotiation process, we developed this basic map for B2B negotiations. Let's take a minute to walk through it. First, and this is important, selling and negotiation are two distinct things in a buying journey. They overlap with one another, and the activity you do to sell sets the stage for what you'll negotiate. Think about this blend of selling and negotiation in two categories of activities. We call these sizing the pie on the left side, where traditional selling activities are more involved, and protecting the pie on the right side, where more traditional negotiation activities are involved. Because these activities overlap and work in complement, the trick is to identify the pivot point where a focus on selling turns to a focus on negotiating. The pivot is often led by the customer. For example, when you add new stakeholders and build consensus with your mobilizer, you're sizing the pie or building the value of your idea in the minds of these stakeholders. As you teach around the pain of status quo and the new idea, you are sizing the pie. As you take control of the decision-making process, you are sizing the pie. But at some point, you notice there are different interactions with fewer stakeholders, like procurement and finance, where you are laser focused on the economic value of the change. They pay close attention to specific details and terms in your conversation. When you feel this shift, your chance to size the pie is over. Now you have to protect what you've built. When thinking about win-loss analysis, you may want to evaluate how well you follow the map. Did you effectively size the pie? Did you identify the pivot? How well did you protect the pie? This will help you better read future negotiation situations. Now that we understand the high-level map of negotiations, recognizing that selling and negotiating are intertwined in the buying journey, let's talk about how to best approach those specific customer interactions where negotiation is present. And let's start by examining how negotiations go wrong. They go wrong when we give away too much of the pie we built. How does this happen? There's a pretty simple formula. Let's say you've built excitement throughout the customer's organization for a new idea and solution. You see a clear path to a deal closing, and then your buyer throws in a curveball, a last-minute request for a concession, a price cut, a new negotiable, an extra review step, whatever it might be. Given how much you have riding on this deal, you react emotionally. The German language is known for words with very particular definitions. And so I'll use a German word here to describe the emotional reaction. Torschlusspanik. It's the feeling you get when you enter the subway platform just as the voice comes on the speaker, doors closing. Most people in this situation will do whatever they can, including put their life at risk, to make it on the train before the doors close. We do the same in sales. A curveball is thrown in a deal, and that has us feeling like the deal is slipping away. The doors are closing, and we need to do whatever is necessary to keep it alive. We'll ask our company for permission to discount. We'll offer unnecessary concessions. We'll accept unreasonable demands. We give in to Torschlusspanik. Think about how much value is collectively lost in deals each year when sellers react unreasonably to Torschlusspanik. This is why we need rules of thumb to handle negotiation moments where Torschlusspanik is present. As I shared earlier, we recently conducted a study of near 300 individual sellers to understand better the negotiating behaviors of high performers and core performers in complex B2B selling environments. What we found were some interesting rules of thumb. Some behaviors that high performers exhibit more often, which we should try to emulate, and some behaviors that core performers exhibit more often, which we should look to avoid. For the purpose of today's presentation, let's focus on rules of thumb in 3 areas. 1, preparing for negotiations. 2, performing the interaction. And 3, handling price and concession moments. When it comes to preparation, a key difference between high-performing and core-performing negotiators is their concern for customer outcomes versus concern for their own outcomes. Our research showed high performers are more often focused on making sure everyone gets something out of the deal. It's a win-win. And they are more generally concerned about retaining a reputation for reasonableness. Core performers, on the other hand, are hyper-focused on making sure they win the negotiation. This goes back to the customer perspective I talked about earlier. Customers aren't as pleased with the buying journey when they feel it's a contest that they lost. They may take that out on the seller by either walking away, choosing another vendor, or being a less than enthused new customer. To test how well we do this, we can ask a question to the customer about negotiation preparation in our win-loss analysis. Did you feel like the negotiation was a win-win? To go further on this win-win point, high performers more often focus their preparation on understanding their customers' goals, and they try to identify ways to deliver additional value to both parties. Core performers more often spend their preparation time trying to anticipate objections and forming their strategy to rebut them. They work on their introductory remarks or a strategy for lightening the mood because they assume it will be a combative interaction. What we found here is a key difference in the tension each party is preparing to create. High performers plan for the tension in the negotiation to be between status quo and a goal to be achieved. Core performers plan for that tension to be between what they want and what the other party wants. The question we should ask ourselves is, which is better for a lasting relationship? Here's another win-loss question to test for negotiation preparation. Did the seller understand and work to provide you, the customer, what you value? Now let's talk about performing the negotiation. High performers and core performers think differently about the temperament they bring to this moment. High performers tend to take a balanced approach. They keep it professional and they try to mirror the customer in their temperament and behavior. Core performers tend to go to extremes. Either they push too hard toward friendship, complicating the process as a result, or they keep themselves too distant to avoid emotional involvement and make no formal connection. A win-loss question to test negotiation performance could be, did the seller connect professionally with you in your meetings together? High-performing negotiators also use stories as a way of engaging the other party, rather than gambits they hope will give them an advantage. Our research showed that high performers more often share stories of others who have adopted a similar course they are suggesting for their customer, or they ask questions designed to confirm a shared interest in doing business. Core performers repeatedly mention the advantages of the proposed solution, hoping the customer will keep their focus there. Or they name the emotions the customer appears to be feeling as a way of influencing those emotions to get what they want. A good win-loss question might be, how well did the seller use stories to help you catch the vision of a new opportunity? When it comes to handling price and concession discussions, there are subtle rules of thumb that make a big difference. High performers set early expectations about when and how price will be discussed, and they carefully defer to the right moment in the buying journey for that discussion. Core performers leave price conversations more open-ended. They ask the customer to anchor their assumptions, or they give a ballpark quote before they understand the true needs and scope the customer might be interested in. This may satisfy the customer in the moment, but can make later negotiation conversations much more difficult. A win-loss question here might be, did the seller truly understand your needs and scope before offering a price range? When it comes to concessions, high performers and core performers follow different strategies. High performers make concessions contingent on something they'd like in return. Core performers more often offer concessions unconditionally. High performers handle big deal-breaker concessions first. Core performers more often tick off easy concession items first. This saves high performers a lot of time if the concession truly is a deal breaker, and they handle the hardest concessions when the pie is biggest and the customer is most engaged. High performers try as much as they can to move in the customer's direction, assuming the concession must have a reason behind it. Core performers more often just say no, hoping to call the customer's bluff. The high performer difference with concessions is they try to be as fair as possible. They run right at, not away from, the biggest concerns, and they try to understand the reason behind these concerns. A good win-loss question is, did the seller try to understand requests you made for concessions? So to wrap up our negotiation rules of thumb, torsionless panic is real. It can take a big piece out of the pie you've built. We need to recognize it and have rules of thumb to manage it. When preparing, have concern for customer outcomes, not just your own outcomes, and try to connect with the customer's goals and opportunities. When performing the negotiation, make a balanced professional connection and use stories, not gambits, to influence the other party. When handling price and concession moments, talk about price at the right time and in the right way, and make your concessions count by being fair and understanding of the other party's needs. I hope you found some helpful ideas about negotiations that you can apply to your sales interactions. We at Challenger have a number of tools, training, and resources that can help you and your organization be better negotiators and have greater success in complex B2B sales interactions. Please check out our books, follow us on LinkedIn, or if you'd like to contact us directly, use the QR code shown here or visit our website at www.challengerinc.com. I hope you enjoy Win-Loss Week, and in the future, may you win far more than you lose. Thank you.